Welcome to Banking Transformed, the top podcast in retail banking. I'm your host, Jim Roos. The banking industry faces unprecedented pressure to shift from a reactive service model to a proactive engagement strategy. However, many institutions are still hindered by fragmented customer data, disconnected channels, and limited AI capabilities. Banking's future belongs to institutions that can harness the combined power of unified data, artificial intelligence, and seamless experiences to predict and fulfill customer needs before they're even articulated. I'm joined on the Bank Transform podcast by Tim Rutten, Chief Marketing Officer at Backbase, to discuss how financial institutions can unlock their growth potential in an increasingly competitive and rapidly evolving marketplace. We discuss how leading banks are breaking down the traditional barriers between products, channels, and business units to create a cohesive customer journey that builds deeper relationships and unlocks new revenue streams. Tim also provides actionable insights on prioritizing high-impact use cases that can be put in place today. Imagine a picture of banking's future, one where institutions proactively anticipate customer needs, deliver hyper-personalized experiences across all touchpoints, and transform themselves from transactional utilities to indispensable financial partners in their customers' lives. This is what we're going to be discussing today. Before diving into specifics, Tim, could you explain a little bit about your professional journey and how it's led to your current role as CMO at Backbase?
Happy to, and thanks for having me on the podcast, Jim. I'm a big fan, as you know, so I'm very pleased to be at the table here and share my my experience. So yeah, maybe just briefly, I've been with Backbase now for just over 11 years. The journey started in pre-sales or solutions engineering, essentially being in the customers' offices, explaining what the future could look like if they would move to a platform play. And as Backbase, we've been in the area for at least 2 decades, building out one of the leading digital banking platforms, if I may be so free to share that note. And what I've basically seen in my first 5 years in Backbase is that the mindset shift to actually make the move and make the decision and absorb an implementation of sorts, but also move your culture along and upgrade your talent along to really execute on this ambition. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of leadership. And I've been basically blessed to have my first 5 years in the field, flying around the globe, also spending a lot of time in the US to meet change agents and to basically help them understand how to make the move, to also to a degree share our insights and help them educate their boardrooms to make the right call so that they have longevity in their technology stack and basically can execute the ambition. The 5 years that followed, I operated practically as the right hand of our founder, of Jouk Pleiter, the CEO of Backbase, building out capabilities in the company that we were lacking. And eventually last year, November, I stepped in as full-time CMO to continue the passion that I have to bring Backbase to even higher grounds.
Are you a community banker thinking, how do we stay competitive in 2025 without losing our personal touch? At Backbase, they've just released a new research paper that dives right into that. It's called Unlocking Growth Mode for Community Financial Institutions in 2025. It's a strategy snapshot packed with insights for community banks and credit unions looking to modernize without doing a complete tech overhaul. For instance, you'll learn how to close the AI readiness gap, how to deliver seamless onboarding and personalized service across your entire customer lifecycle, and how to get real ROI from digital investments without ripping out your entire core system. We're talking about quick wins, fintech-style agility, and sustainable growth, all while keeping that high-tech service your customers and members love. If you're ready to move beyond buzzwords into the actionable strategy, grab the paper at backbase.com/growth mode or click the link in our show notes. That's backbase.com/growth mode. And let's unlock growth mode together. It goes without saying that financial institutions today are faced with a lot of challenges, and the industry is moving faster than ever before. You can talk about economic uncertainty. We can talk about increasing competition. We can talk about the evolving customer expectations. But despite all these things that are pulling us to change, a lot of financial institutions have a difficulty doing that. So what are the biggest obstacles that you see preventing banking from actually shifting into a growth mode?
Yeah. So there's a few parts that to me stand out that basically hold banks back to a degree. I think for more than a decade already, we've been talking about, hey, you have a whole range of siloed systems in your back office, in your infrastructure. You need to bring those together to be successful in the future. However, that story itself doesn't really carry any urgency, because if you feel that your application is 4 out of 5 stars today, you're profitable across the board, why would you bother? Why would you make the move and risk your career?
Where's the pain?
Right?
Yeah.
There's no pain, or not sufficient enough, because yes, it would be beautiful in a complete platform vision, but if I'm the executive, why would I make the call if I am actually doing quite well on my overall KPIs? So that problem is there, but the problem behind it that you now see becoming more and more apparent is you're probably spending the majority of your IT investment on just keeping the lights running, while the actual innovation you're able to bring to the table is limited, which up until a few years ago was not really an issue, right? It was not really an issue that you were delivering a one-size-fits-all application to a degree, which maybe looked okay-ish or decent. You were supporting your members or customers, decently enough. But fast forward to today, that expectation has once more changed dramatically, not just with Netflix or Spotify or Uber. I think those are clear. The expectation is a bit higher. But right now, the expectation is vastly different, or becoming vastly different, with the new paradigm of AI kicking in. Meaning, on the home screen where your banking application sits, all the other players are embracing AI. There's even big fintech entering the domain, or challenger banks entering the domain, that are almost AI native or AI first, and they can bring that to life very rapidly.
Yeah.
Which results into the following playing ground, Jim. It basically results into players like Revolut, like Chime, like Nubank in Latin America, like others in Europe, that bring a technology and an execution pace to the table that delivers something to the customer base that is vastly different. One, their applications are becoming very dynamic, if not delivering the segment of one vision. Meaning, my retail banking experience is vastly different than yours.
Yep.
Like literally. Beyond that, the reason that they are so successful, and for instance, Revolut can onboard 1 million net new customers to bank. Yes, it's the branding. Yes, it's their go-to market, but it's also because they know the amount of money they can spend to acquire net new customers to bank. Because once they're in the bank, they literally have a growth engine or a growth hacking capability to activate those customers and to expand and deepen the share of wallet that you have with those customers in a very, let's say, hyper-focused approach. Meaning they know exactly how they can optimize the relationship with Tim, given where he is in his life with his family and his work and his financial, let's say, dealings. I think that mindset shift right now, it's almost amplified with the new age of AI kicking in, because all of a sudden you have the capability, or at least the technology is there, to truly deliver that at scale. There's no way back anymore. Coming back to the earlier point, like what's holding banks back? I think the real urgency to change, and then also the translation into, okay, we have to change, fair enough, but how do I then make the transition? How do I eat the elephant, essentially?
It's interesting. The banking industry has talked about being customer-centric for decades, not just years, but decades. But the talk has not necessarily been matched by the walk. It's one thing to build a good user experience on a mobile platform. We're doing that. We get good grades on how well we build and deliver mobile banking. But that's not customer centricity. It's not really looking out for the customer. And you talked about how the most progressive digital organizations are using digital data, digital delivery, and AI to build better customer engagement models. What fundamental changes are needed to unify the banking experience at legacy financial institutions that you're still not seeing?
Yeah. I think the main thing to hone in on here is at the end of the day, and I'm really going to oversimplify the world here, but I'm the customer. I'm just one person, and I want to be treated in one way by a brand. And that holds true for all brands. Now, specifically to my banking relationship, of which I will have many, right? The days of just having one bank are over. I think clearly that is what you have seen in the industry. But still, the bank that I'm primarily banking with, I'd like to be treated that the bank knows me across my full life cycle completely, front to back, and is servicing me front to back in a very easy and approachable way. Meaning, if I onboard on system A or through point solution number A, I then get my daily banking through point solution B. If I talk to the call center, they are servicing me through another solution C. Like that complete flow is broken. That also doesn't allow me as a customer or a client to have the best experience because I'm basically entering all these different windows of apparently the same shop, but not really. And what I'm trying to get to is that I have a customer life cycle. So I get net new, I onboard net new to the bank. So basically I'm acquired. I then need to be activated. I need to be retained. I need to be expanded. Those 4 boxes are typically being serviced by 4 different technology stacks or 4 different point solutions. Meaning, by no means are you going to be able to be as superior as a Revolut, as a Chime, as any of those other players. Now, again, I'm not saying that they're playing in the exact same space, that they have the same depth of product portfolio like they do, but over time they could. So I am going to ring fence them as the common enemy. And what do they have that sets them apart and that allows them to drive maximum customer lifetime value? That wherever I am in my customer life cycle, there's just one way of consuming the experience, regardless of the channel, physical or digital. And I think that's first of all the thinking pattern that needs to change. And that directly comes back to unlocking growth mode. Unlocking growth mode literally means servicing the customer through one digital platform across all touch points, infused with data, leveraging AI to have a next generation banking experience that is completely dynamic and completely personalized to get the maximum value out of the relationship. This is for the bank, and get the best experience as an actual end user, which certainly is the definition in the coming few years to play towards.
You know, it's interesting, Tim, because we talked about this on your Banking Reinvented podcast with Yout and yourself. And the challenge is, you know, every financial institution has all the data in the world. And now that's overstatement, but the reality is they have more data, certainly more data than they're using. But in the traditional banking model, we use this to understand the customers from an internal standpoint so we can make decisions as to product development, maybe sales models and all this. But financial institutions really hold back from letting the customers know that we have all this information on their behalf and actually deploy solutions against that, which really is holding back that growth mode because you only can grow if your customers know you know them or your prospects know you understand them and you actually deploy solutions against that. So what practical steps can institutions take to transform their data from a passive asset into an active growth engine?
Yeah. If anything, I would say that this industry is sitting on a gold mine.
Oh, yeah.
Literally, because you have all those customers, you have all that data. Just imagine bringing that together holistically and tapping into it. Like it will set you apart. 100% certain. Let me talk a little bit about the patterns or the blueprint that we see in the industry that works. So first of all, you have an integration challenge because you need to bring all that data, all that capability together in one single layer that has one domain model where all the data entries are literally mapped towards each other and made available to, the rest of the ecosystem. It literally starts there. You need to solve that integration challenge because you're not going to go into a world of, doing core modernization and payments modernization and basically going through all those modernizations and then eventually going to actually deliver some value to the customer. It will take way too much time. Literally, it will take years. Meaning the approach that we typically see happening in the market that works very well is more progressive. It's more step by step. And you basically almost slice and dice the elephant, as I mentioned earlier. And you start with the biggest problem first. For now, I'm just going to show you what the different ingredients could be. So we have the integration platform as a service, I would personally look into and validate, hey, how do we integrate all that data into one single layer? From there onwards, there's a need to make sure that this data is available appropriately. Meaning, how do you make sure that there's one single language to talk to the integration layer with to make sure that if I query customer data, I get everything on Tim, right? So that I don't need to query all these downstream systems separately and get all this stuff about Tim, but it's not really sanitized. So that's part one. Get an integration layer in place that brings everything together so you can tap into the data, which is like a data lakehouse, data warehouse layer itself on top, which also feeds into the AI strategy directly. Meaning, with that data being a bit more sanitized and properly integrated, all of a sudden you can feed the AI models and your machine learning capabilities to drive proper value out of the data that you have. On top of that layer, we would talk about this as the intelligence layer, bringing data and AI together in actual use cases, right? Because so far I'm just talking about infrastructure mostly. So in the intelligence layer, I would really expect a data and AI capability to come together and basically power up large language learning models that you have available, typically from the hyperscalers. You're not going to self-train one of these LLMs. And on top of that, you want to have an agentic framework. And then with an agentic framework, I'm not talking about just the buzzword. I'm actually talking literally about which technologies are you going to apply to fire up agents that can actually deal with all the downstream microservices and APIs that are available in the platform. Meaning, how do you empower the agent to actually do the different steps and do smart workflows and basically decide on their own to bring all the relevant data and capability to the table to then eventually service it up to the customer. So I think if I zoom out like a lot, you basically have your integration in place, you have your intelligence layer in place where data and AI is nicely combined, and then you have your engagement layer where you actually start to orchestrate all the capabilities that you have to service your customer, but also to service your employee population. Now, those patterns are industry broad, meaning they're not specific to Backbase per se. This is really the best practice view on what a digital stack should be looking like. I think also there you definitely want to stand on the shoulders of giants, just like we do. We don't build our own infrastructure. We don't have our own data centers. We leverage Microsoft for this. It's one of our key partnerships. If you think about the data and AI fabric, that's on top of Azure because we can really unlock their capability. And we bring the relevant data and the relevant models to drive real value. Now, I can go on and on and on, but in essence, the patterns are there, the blueprint is there, so you can really expedite your execution if you can change your mind on how to execute, moving to a platform potentially.
Well, and it's interesting as you build that platform, as you build that pyramid of insight and data and actually deployment, it really gets you to the point that we've been talking about the industry, and we're talking about more and more towards that hyper personalization, the ability to move from a good experience to tremendous engagement, the actual interaction back and forth. While that all sounds great, and we see it in the marketplace in other industries a lot, implementing it at scale remains challenging, especially for organizations, financial institutions, that are continuously worried about the risk of saying the wrong thing to a customer, which is crazy because we don't have to be perfect if we at least have a value exchange on an ongoing basis. But can you share some examples of financial institutions that are actually deploying personalization strategies that can impact their bottom line and actually drive that growth model that we talk about?
Yeah. So if you really think about unlocking growth mode, you will need to get to a model where you're able to segment it out so far that it's so specific to the individual that it indeed can become a little bit dangerous. And dangerous in hyphens here, meaning there needs to be clarity on what you are bringing to the customer at which moment in time. And those patterns or those formulas you want to have a view on. So if I look at it from the Backbase perspective, there can always be the human in the loop part in the whole flow, especially in private banking and in wealth management. You see that is it's paramount. You need to have a human in the loop step before you send out a certain report or a certain piece of advice to one of your clients. If you look at more, let's say, long tail customer base, let's just look at retail for a second. That makes no sense because the cost to serve will be way too high. You're actually going to drag yourself down. So you want to set up the system and the applications in such a way that you are comfortable with the almost auto magic campaigns that you're running across the board, across all the applications. If you think about marketing towards your existing customer base, so far it always has been done relatively tactical, meaning we're just going to fire up a campaign. If the customer has product A and B, we're going to go for product C, which is very safe in a way. It also doesn't really speak to what this customer is in the middle of or based on their transactions. So what I'm trying to say is you need to bring everything together that is relevant to the customer. And then from there onwards, what you're going to position when it comes to both the experience, what's on the glass, but also what you're looking to cross and upsell, it needs to be so much in the moment and in context that it will never come across as abrasive or pushy or, hey, you're overstepping the line here. Under that assumption, the fear of applying this already becomes a bit lesser the problem. I think the main problem sits with what happens if, let's say, our algorithm starts hallucinating and starts positioning products that don't exist, or that starts putting words in advice that we cannot hold true to and we are regulated on, as an example. Taking a step back, there are clear guardrails in all the, let's say, elements of how you apply AI and agentic and smart workflows to make sure that that actually can never happen to begin with. But it basically means, how do you bring that capability to life in an actual end user application? So I think there's a lot of learning right now. Every week the frameworks get better. Every week the models are getting better. I think that's actually the mantra in Backbase is to stay 1 hour ahead of the market, to be smart enough to pick up what is currently the zeitgeist or what's currently the new breakthrough and basically bring that to our customers. Mind you, though, I think also in full transparency, I think we are, let's say, 6 to 12 months ahead of the typical customer, given the regulatory framework that's not fully complete or clearly baked. So typically they don't want to move that fast just yet, especially when it comes to the customer. That is less or so on the back office. And I think over time, when the use cases are even becoming more clear, that the adoption and the embrace on how this actually works probably will get better.
Who's doing it right now? What organization do you look at and you going, you know what? They're kind of, nobody's at the finish line by far, but who's kind of getting it and doing it in the marketplace today?
Yeah. Specifically in the US, I'm not a personal, let's say, I don't have a personal relationship with any of the US firms myself, so I couldn't comment to that in detail. But I'll stick with the example of Revolut, where in essence you see that they first of all have completely tailored value propositions. So there's dynamic value propositions where you put together certain products, or you go for a certain, let's say, level of account and level of servicing, which combines a lot of value-added services that are not per se banking related. For instance, there's even a subscription to WeWork in one of the plans, right? Because you are a persona apparently that maybe is a sole entrepreneur or a proprietor. And, there's combinations there that really connect with the individual, which almost makes it a no-brainer to pay for the subscription fee. So there's one angle that's a tailored value proposition where you bring together the right elements to really resonate with a specific target market. Try to do that in a traditional bank, not easy for a variety of reasons. The second thing that I think really stands out is how they drive product adoption. So the moment you are net new to bank, there is a 90-day plan running, if not longer, that basically ensures that you have sufficient touch points to get, let's say, into a pattern and into a mode that you open up the application. Just like the dopamine hits in Instagram or other applications. So basically there's a growth hacking mindset in those applications that really ensures that they basically drive you into the bank more and more and more, while building credibility, while bringing holistic financial advice to your phone almost daily that really helps you overall in your financial wellness. I think that's an example that is already specific enough to say, hey, okay, well, that's the basics. There's much more to come, and I can talk about that as well. But I basically want to make the point that when you get the basics in and the foundational elements in, you get the ability to have tailored value propositions to basically add value-added services into the mix so that you can stand out and go to market with a value prop that is not just a checking account, a depository account, and a credit card. There's so much more, which really makes you, let's say, differentiating into the market. And then the moment you enter to the front door, the application itself it's just a very different animal. I think also I would really, I don't want to bump the numbers of the Revoluts here, but you have to experience it for yourself. It's very hard to also verbally explain in a way.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. We're seeing increasing collaboration between banks and fintechs and banks and third-party solution providers, Backbase included. And really, you have to change the way your partnerships work in order to get the most out of out of the growth engine, out of the growth mode. How should partnerships be structured today to accelerate a financial institution's ability to deliver growth, to deliver innovation, to deliver better experiences and engagement?
Yep. Well, I think you said the magic word. It's a partnership. So I would really refrain from saying it's a vendor relationship in the scenario of Backbase as an example. We are most successful with the firms where they truly see us as their partner on the journey, on the transformational journey. The moment you just look at a player like Backbase or anyone else in the space, I would argue, as just a vendor and they need to deliver whatever you ask of them, I don't think you're getting the benefit of the technology. I don't think you're getting the benefit of the leadership that's available with these firms and in the collaboration with these firms, which our people are very much exposed to our customers. That also is change in a way to see the different let's say, heartbeat of our people compared to their own. And that cross pollination also really helps in driving transformational projects to the next level. In terms of the how, look, it's a partnership, so you're really in it together. And you have to, let's say, slice and dice the elephant to make it small, to be able to make pragmatic progress, meaning you need to have a way of doing this progressively. We talk about this as progressive modernization, that you actually can go piece by piece, block by block. So it's not this massive thing you need to do. You can actually make it small, go for an end-to-end use case, or go just for the integration challenge to begin with, or just start in retail onboarding, meaning map the opportunity to make a transformational move to something where the business really has a need today. And it doesn't need to be a complete large-scale transformation day one at all. Those days are also way behind Backbase. So I think there the level of partnership you want to get into is being so aligned and so calibrated on what will really move the needle for the institution that you can also really execute on it together. And the final thing I will add, Jim, is that there's a whole ecosystem of, let's say, smaller fintech players that bring really great capability. I'll just name Savvy Money as one example, or Entrust.
Yep.
Like they tackle really specific things, similar to Feedzai. Like their technology is second to none. No need for Backbase to self-build this and bring this as our IP. Not at all. Also, the banks will not, or credit unions will not build this. So you basically procure also an ecosystem of fintechs around the transformation that you can bring into the mix easily. Also there, it's partnership driven. You basically build a best of suite or best of breed combination of technology that allows you to really, get the pace and get off the ground fast while making the right and sound technology decisions.
You're about to have a user conference talking about moving into the growth mode. And a lot of financial institutions are checking off boxes. But at the same time, they're held back with, I'm going to call excuses, from regulatory constraints to budgetary constraints to organizational structural constraints. What is the biggest hurdle that organizations need to get over in order to move from checking the boxes to really accelerating growth? What have you seen in the marketplace? Because I know this is the focus of your event. This was the focus of our podcast we did together on your platform the other day, talking about getting off stuck. What is the biggest hurdle that has to be addressed first?
Yeah. Let's start with me sharing that I have the utmost respect for all the senior executives that are in the seat, either in the credit unions, the community banks, or the banks that we are servicing. They do not have an easy map in front of them. Literally, they do not. Because the nirvana state that we are talking about here, where you're in a beautiful single platform world, you have all your integrations nicely standardized and available. You're able to unlock your data and AI strategy with an intelligence layer, and you have a standardized engagement layer that drives all of your touch points. I think nobody will argue against going there. It's fantastic. Let's do it. Let's either self-build it or let's acquire it. There's different flavors here, but that is not the issue, I think, Jim. I think the vision is very clear. I think also that's the feedback that Backbase gets in the marketplace. The real hurdle is the fact that that is not how the bank is organized, nor the credit union. Literally, they are not organized as such. They are organized in either product lines or lines of business. Then there's a certain leadership structure that also follows a certain hierarchy that has an impact to how you go to market. So I think in essence, you have a bit of a reflection of you get what you organize for. Trying to break out of that pattern. So basically telling the retail banking leadership, hey, we're going to decommission your installation, or we're going to move to a new platform. And that's where your new retail experience will be built upon, and all the capabilities will come together. And do the same thing to small, medium business and to commercial or private or wealth or a subset of those. That takes very substantial leadership to break through, which starts immediately at the C-suite. So I think the main thing I'm trying to share here is that this is a boardroom conversation. If the boardroom is not aligned on this vision, even with the most ambitious change makers in a particular line of business or pocket of the organization, will probably not be able to move the full needle. They might get a great set of progress already in retail or in small, medium business or commercial. But to get the full value of a value proposition like Backbase, you basically have to say Backbase is the anchor platform for the complete institution, next to our CRM, next to our core. That's the triangle of platforms that we work with. That is the lens through which we're going to analyze every use case and every scenario we would like to bring to life. And all other discussions are irrelevant. Also to get the pace internally, to not have endless debates on how we build stuff, right? And that's, I think, really the mindset shift that the boardroom needs to realize, that if they want to see that type of output and outcome, A, they need to be bought in to actually say, hey, this is the direction. B, they need to organize for that, right? Because otherwise you're going to just continue running into brick walls because certain players do not want to move for a variety of reasons. And then C, the moment you do go for this, you have to see this through, right? The first 6 months, you're not going to be successful immediately. Get the MVP out there, get into the new rhythm, the new way of working. Like, change management is very hard. And that's also why I really salute the change agents in this industry. Because, I'm looking after the marketing department in Backbase as a vendor. I have to drive a lot of change all the time to get the maximum out of my people and the function and get Backbase, on the map completely. Like the moment I would wake up to do that for a complete bank, like, I'm impressed, right? So I also want to be really clear that I know this challenge it's daunting. It is not small, but there's definitely a way out. And that's completely the mission of Backbase. We are here to help you to not feel frustrated because you have the vision, but you can't execute on it. So we're basically here to set you free. And we truly believe that if you want to move into growth mode, which the majority of the executives are actually picking up the phone for, we need to grow again. There's only so much efficiency I can apply internally. Getting into growth mode means, okay, what are the ingredients to get there? That's basically the platform view and getting into a growth flywheel with your consumer base, where you have this massive benefit, Jim, and then I will shut my mouth. But the massive benefit is that you have a fantastic brand as an existing institution. You do. You have a whole population of customers that are sitting there. Some of them are dormant, but you have those already. You don't need to newly acquire them to bank, right? So what happens if you unlock that group on the existing customer base that you have with a platform like Backbase that is completely seamless across the full customer lifecycle, across all your lines of business, and also enables your employees to assist them and basically unlock even more value from that population? Yeah, I think there's tremendous opportunity by moving into that model. And that's what we also see with our customer base that has all these ingredients in place to execute against.
Tim, we talked about on your banking reinvented, and I think what's interesting is it gets back into the whole concept that, as much as we like to talk about buying the technology that makes this happen, you can't buy technology and not have a growth mindset that can move it forward. And as much as we try to talk about it, I mean, I know this is what your user conference is going to be about, is what we're going to continue to talk on this podcast and in your podcast about, is at the end of the day, it's about leadership and culture. And if you don't embrace change, if you don't really look at banking beyond what it's been in the past, you won't get to that growth mode, because you can't buy technology that'll make it all of a sudden happen on a dime if your organization can't deploy it in a way the customer is going to accept it. And it goes well beyond how good a mobile app looks. And it goes well beyond how you use data if your organization is not structured in a way. So, Tim, finally, as you look forward, and I know you're always looking forward, and being a marketer, you have a positive attitude by nature. What excites you about the near-term future in banking?
Yeah. What excites me, Jim, is the following. For the past decade, we've been transforming banks, but mostly on the servicing side of the house. So by now you have better digital banking experiences that, any of the customers in your bank can use daily to do their self-servicing. For the majority, that is lower cost, better experience. That's what it is. So you're basically lowering your cost to serve and you're delivering, probably a significantly better experience. It will not unlock the full growth potential that you have as an institution. So I think the exciting thing on the short term is the fact that we're adding something called the sales suite, where in reality, the servicing part is important, but that's more of a cost driver almost. The sales part is where things get really interesting because that's where you start properly onboarding and originating for certain products. And that's where you start to activate and expand the actual customer base that you are servicing. If you bring those two things together on a platform like the one that we've built over the past decade, I really think you're going to find a breakthrough within our customer base, but also with the new ones that we'll be onboarding. Because the final frontier that we're now in when it comes to technology, with the whole data and AI wave entering the door pretty aggressively, you have to move. You literally have to, because big fintech and the challengers and neos, they do have this by design, and they are picking up the pace, and the numbers are showing it. And they're also expanding their value propositions. They are becoming full-fledged banks. So I think there's more urgency than ever. There's better technology than ever. There's more mature vendors than ever. So I think the answer is really, can we get into that mode in the industry that we can actually break through and literally fight back against the big fintechs and the neos and the challengers. So I think mostly it's, hey, let's move in. Let's pick up the pace together. Let's collaborate. And that to me is very exciting because all these technology waves, from the internet to mobile to cloud, they're like a growth spurt for everyone professionally, as well as the institution itself, to really pick up the pace and break through certain legacy patterns or legacy technology. And that's, we're in the middle of that, Jim. So we're going to be talking about this indeed, 28th till 30th of April in Scottsdale, Arizona, Backbase Engage. We'll be talking a lot about that on the channels as well as on the podcast. So if you'd like to learn more, feel free to tap into it. But we'll also have more season coverage with Jim anyhow.
Yeah, if you can't make the event or our financial brand forum that comes up in a week, the reality is we're going to be talking about it on both of our podcasts as long as we're both in our positions, because
For sure.
The issue doesn't go away. Thank you so much for being on the show, Tim.
It's been fun, Jim. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Banking Transformed, the winner of 3 international awards for podcast excellence. If you enjoy our work, please give us a positive review. In addition, be sure to catch my articles on the financial brand and the research we're doing for the Digital Banking Report. This has been a production of Evergreen Podcasts. A special thank you to our producer, Collins Blakely, audio engineer, Chris Fafalius, and video producer, Will Pritz. If you have not already done so, remember to subscribe to Banking Transform on both your favorite podcast app and on our YouTube channel for more thought-provoking discussions on the intersection of finance, technology, and leadership.